on Twitter, I'll say it here again. One of the greatest performances in a title fight in a long time. Dominating Tony Ferguson. Tony, obviously, 12-fight winning streak, hadn't lost since 2012, and Justin Gaethje made him look like a damn amateur in there. Beat him from pillar to post, finishing him in the 5th round with, by the way, something I want to give a quick shout to. His jab all night long was phenomenal. I didn't know Justin Gaethje had that much of an amazing jab, and he kept Tony Ferguson on the end of that jab all night long. Ended up finishing the fight with the jab. He hit him with that left jab. Tony, you could see like his body was just not responding. Like he started shaking his head. I think it broke his orbital. Regardless, he ended up getting the stoppage, earning the interim title along the way, and setting up potentially a fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov. Potentially, we'll get into that later. But Angel, just how surprised were you? How impressed were you by Justin Gaethje's performance?
I mean, no matter what, I knew going into that fight that it could go either way. I still believe it can. But I did reconsider picking my pick at that point. I picked Tony, but in the end, Gaethje ended up taking the win. He looked great. He looked phenomenal. I mean, technical striking aspect just looked on another level. It was so clean. It was so perfect. It just the entire night he just looked great. He in and of himself was very surprised with himself. It almost seemed like if he didn't know he had the ability to be this good, and it was really rewarding to him. You can see it at the end of the fight that he was truly kind of like happy with himself. Obviously, he's not fully content yet because he doesn't have the belt yet. He wants that fight with Khabib. He wants that belt. But I mean, he looked amazing. So I mean, kudos to him, and hopefully we get that belt soon for him, or at least attempts to get that belt for him.
Yeah, overall, I was pretty iffy on it going in about it could be either guy, but I was thinking like, man, Tony Ferguson, like I feel like fighters are going to fight a lot differently given that there's no crowd and a lot of people feed off that energy. I thought Justin Gaethje was one of the guys that feeds off that energy. I thought it would play a big role, and I actually, I picked Tony, but I even said it last week. I'm like, wouldn't it just be perfect for this fight that we've been waiting years for, to just be derailed in an empty arena by Justin Gaethje? Wouldn't that just be perfect for him to get stopped, to just ruin all MMA fans' hopes? And I picked Tony, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's what did happen, except I thought it was going to be an early knockout. No, he dominated him. It wasn't even close. There were multiple 10-8 rounds in there. I'm pretty sure, like, I wrote up a piece earlier this week with KHI Press, something along the lines of, like, I found the judges' scorecards. If the fight would have not been stopped, because it got stopped at the very end of the 5th round, the scores would have been something along the lines of 50-45, 49-45, and 49-44. So he beat the shit out of Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson's one real highlight was in that 2nd round when he knocked Justin down with an uppercut at the end of the round. But outside of that, he had no real success against him. And honestly, I was completely wrong. I thought that Tony would be a guy that benefit from no crowd just because he's that type of guy that he would go fight, anywhere, honestly. That's just his type of style. He's very much a guy that doesn't let that type of stuff get in his head. But I thought Justin did even better without a crowd because he's a guy that feeds off that energy. And honestly, there are multiple times where he hurt Tony, but instead of going for the kill, he kind of just reset, he got back in position, and he went back to just technically beating the shit out of him. He didn't rush anything. And part of me wonders, like, if that crowd was there, would he get over-involved and get into his head and just go for the finish super fast and end up getting rocked or something along those lines? So overall, one of the greatest title fight performances I've seen in a long time. The other title fight of that night, Henry Cejudo, Dominic Cruz. There was a lot of controversy coming out of this one after a kind of controversial stoppage in the 2nd round. But overall, I mean, what a performance by Henry Cejudo. The first guy to stop Dominic Cruz with strikes. Did you agree with the stoppage? And even if you didn't, just how impressed were you by Henry's performance? I mean, we know he was good, but beating Dominic Cruz is like next level.
I mean, he did an amazing job. I mean, from a technical aspect, I mean, just going into it, he broke him down into the legs. He worked his way up. He just started the legs, worked his way up. And, I mean, I felt like Dominic never had a really good response for Henry in any aspect of the fight. And it's not because Dominic was doing a bad job, but I never saw any counters come out of him when there was any exchanges in there. He tried to prevent that leg kick from happening, but it looked like it ended up hurting him more because it almost made it easier for Henry to attack the leg, and if he wasn't attacking the leg, he was attacking up top, so he was able to mix it up. So he gave Henry a lot to work with in the fight. And I think in the end, that was kind of his downfall because, I mean, he ended up getting caught up top. I mean, he was setting up a couple feints. I mean, I think there was a feint that led like a series of punches into that later on, and then obviously the knee that happened, and then we got the stoppage.
Yeah, I think you did a good job bringing up the legs there. That first round. Like Dominic Cruz says, ring rust isn't real. Ring rust was a really big thing to me in that first round. He looked a lot slower than he had in the past, and his legs are getting chopped up in that first round. The second round, I actually thought Dom was turning it around. I think Cejudo still probably. I mean, he got stopped in the last 2 seconds of round number two, so we can pretty much talk about the whole round itself. But I thought round two was looking a lot better. I thought he was finding a home for the right hand, and part of the reason why I feel like, okay, the stoppage, now that we've had a week to sit on it, I don't think it was that bad at all. But in my head, I feel like subconsciously I was kind of upset because I thought the fight was just starting to get good right around the time the finish happened, and it was kind of weird. At first, I thought Dominic just slipped. Instead, he got hit with the knee clean, and then Peterson kind of jumped in. Honestly, if he jumped in whenever he was on all fours getting hit in the head, it wouldn't have been an issue. But instead, he waited for Dom to get up to stop it, which was kind of strange. Regardless, disappointing one for Cruz. I had a lot of high hopes for him. I thought that he would just manage the distance well, but man, Cejudo, in hindsight, probably should have thought about the fact that he has really good leg kicks himself, and TJ Dillashaw kind of exposed the idea that you could really just go to town on Dom's legs due to his style. Um, but regardless, a bit of a disappointing one for Cruz, but god damn, Henry Cejudo's good. That has his current streak that he ended on, and if he is fully retiring, which we're going to talk about later, has to be the greatest four-straight fight streak in MMA history, right? Like, I don't see any other one that could possibly top it. DJ, TJ, Moraes, Cruz. That's it. That's the greatest streak in MMA history. I mean, you could probably throw one in from Jones, throw one in from Fedor. Some of the GOATs have their own really, really good streaks, but to me, that four-fight streak is the greatest of all time. Next fight up, a guy that should be getting a championship. We just talked about two championship fights. The guy that should be in the championship conversation is Francis Ngannou, old Franny, knocking out, murdering Jairzinho Rozenstruik inside 20 seconds. We spent like 10 minutes. I think this is the longest we spent on a fight last week, just talking about Ngannou and Rozenstruik's path to victory, and maybe Rozenstruik's being overlooked, and if he counters well, and he used Francis Ngannou does not give a flying fuck about anybody's analysis. He's just a big boy who likes to swing and bang. That's all he did. He took like one punch and a kick from Rozenstruik. He's like, nah, I got this. And he just ran at him, swinging wildly, and the first punch he landed knocked him out. At this point, what more does Ngannou have to do to get a title shot? It's just ridiculous. But were you surprised at all? Because I know it's hard to be surprised by Francis Ngannou at this point, but he's finding new ways to surprise people just by how fat. Like, Rozenstruik was undefeated, 10-0, and he knocked him out inside of 15 seconds. Like, how surprised were you?
I mean, I wasn't surprised, but I knew it was a possibility. I had some hope for Rosen, but at the same time, I was like, it's not going to happen, is it? And it didn't happen. But it was like, because we talked about the leg kicks, we talked about managing the distance. As soon as he got that first leg kick, he's like, oh fuck that, I'm not taking another one of those, and went for the kill. And but shout out to Jairzinho for putting himself out there, one of the few guys who would even dare to put himself out there, and hopefully he can rebuild from this and make his way up. I mean, the guy has 11 fights in MMA in total, not necessarily UFC. So he has room to grow, room to improve. I mean, he lost to a guy who's just amazing and a freak of nature in his own right. And, Jairzinho should not be disappointed. I mean, he beat Alistair Overeem before that, and he just lost to Francis Ngannou. So I don't think he should be disappointed in himself. He lost to, a high-level opponent who probably should be the champion, if not fighting for the championship right now.
Yeah, the whole heavyweight division is pretty frustrating, and I actually saw that some of the heavyweights are starting to get pissed off at Stipe. I saw that Curtis Blades and Ben Rothwell came out, like, just kind of upset about the whole situation with him. And, I get it, because as much as people, all right, I'm gonna be the Hitler here, okay? If you guys are gonna get mad at me, then get mad at me, okay? And I've seen people like, you can't criticize Stipe, and it's like any criticism against Stipe immediately gets overthrown because he's a firefighter, and I understand that. I'm not having an issue with Stipe the person. I have an issue with Stipe the champion. and Stipe, the champion, has had one fight in 20 months. Like, like he last fought and here's the thing, right? People are like, oh, he had the eye injury and it's the pandemic, he can't do anything, and he can't train, and like all other UFC fighters are somehow miraculously training, but Stipe is the one that can't. And it's one thing to be like, well, you know what, he's a paramedic and he's a firefighter, and that's fine, and I respect the hell out of him because I would never do that, not in a million years. He's a better man than I am. But also, he has to pick whether or not he wants to be a champion, he wants to be a fighter, or if he wants to have that duty to Ohio and what he wants to do with that. Because it's not fair. People say it's not fair to criticize Stipe. It's not fair for guys like Francis Ngannou to just sit around with nothing to do. Because Francis, he's had one fight in the last 12 months. And then, you know what happened Saturday? He fought the one guy who would accept, and he knocked him out inside 20 seconds, and now he's got to wait probably another year. Because Stipe said he probably won't be back until winter. So, I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, it's a terrible decision in the heavyweight division. There's no easy answer for it, but I just feel bad for Francis Ngannou.
No, fuck that, Josh. I'm about to talk for the whole heavyweight division. Stipe, you take everything they've worked for, motherfucker. They're gonna fight your fucking ass. They're the real money fight. Ngannou wants that belt.
Steven Mojek, I'm coming for your ass, motherfucker.
I'm gonna fight your fucking ass.
Just,
I am.
I feel like the only thing that would, like, it's funny when Nate does it. I feel like it would be terrifying if Francis Ngannou, with his broken English, just called out Stipe Miocic like that. It would be, it's like whenever Khabib calls out people. It's terrifying.
I always think of the Michael Johnson fight, dude, when he's like, give up. I need the title fight, give up.
He's like, I deserve it. Fucking just starts beating his ass.
Just hammer fisting him, like
Khabib is scary. Like, I remember there was one time where, like, I think it was in UFC 223, like, embedded, and he was talking directly to the camera, and he's like, why you come here? He's like, after the corner through the dog, he's like, why you come here now? Why you come here now? I fight you in Russia. And he's like just talking, and he's like during the weight cut, so he looks like a fucking Skyrim, like Jaguar or something. So he's just like just saying it, and he looks terrifying. Like, it's the broken English, dude. I'm telling you.
We love it though.
And anyways, there's other other fights that happened. Calvin Kattar murdered Jeremy Stephens. This is one of the best fights of the night, honestly. I'm so impressed with Calvin Kattar's boxing. I think pound for pound, Calvin Kattar's boxing is the best in the UFC. Like, I'm not talking striking here. I'm talking pure boxing.
I was about to ask that. I was about to say, do you think there's a difference between pure striking and boxing?
Oh, absolutely. Because, I mean, there's dudes in the UFC that have terrible. John Jones has really bad boxing. We can get into this later, but that's one of the reasons I think Francis Ngannou beats him if they fight. He has really bad boxing in terms of boxing defense, and his chin bails him out a lot of the time, and he's really bad. But you know what he is good at? He's good at gauging the distance, using those kicks to keep people off of him, using elbows when they step in. He's very creative, but his boxing, just a straight up pure, his fists and his defense and stuff like that, it's terrible. But guess what? Doesn't matter. Man,
we can't all be Izzy.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Izzy's a kickboxer, but you know what I'm saying here. Pound boxing wise, Calvin Kattar is a bad motherfucker, man. I think he's right there at the top. Like, I don't see who else would be right there with him, honestly.
No, you're right.
Hell of a